In part one, we met the earliest dreamers, the quiet inventors whose ideas flickered like candle flames against centuries of hand sewing. But now, in this part two, everything shifts. This is where everything becomes more dramatic, more human, and far more complicated. Because the next chapter of sewing machine history isn't just about gears and needles. It's about fear, ambition, courtroom battles, missed opportunities, and inventors who stood at the edge of greatness and lost absolutely everything. Some of the sewing machines that we take for granted today, the ones that we lovingly maintain, restore, or collect, they only exist because of a handful of decisions that were made about 200 years ago. Decisions that were driven by pride, poverty, panic, and sometimes simple bad luck. So, if you've ever wondered who really deserves the credit for the sewing machine that you use today, and how did that humble household tool spark one of the earliest patent wars in American history, then part two is hopefully going to satisfy that curiosity and probably raise a couple more questions. Let's step back into the story and discover what happened next. Walter Hunt was one of those remarkable 19th century minds who seemed almost unable to stop inventing things. He was born in upstate New York. He trained as a mechanical engineer, and he spent his life tinkering with ideas large and small. Fire engines, improving stoves, rotary street sweepers, mail sorting devices, ice plows, early fountain pens, repeating rifles, even suction cup shoes that let circus performers walk up walls. More than 24 of his creations eventually became everyday tools, and many survive in some sort of recognizable form, even up till this day. Sadly for Hunt, he rarely profited from any of them. He often sold his patent rights for very small sums that other people turned into very large fortunes. His sewing machine was probably the most impressive creation. Working from his narrow little shop off Abington Square in Manhattan, Hunt had designed the very first practical machine that didn't imitate hand sewing. Instead, he introduced an absolute breakthrough: a curved eye-pointed needle carrying one thread through the fabric and a shuttle carrying another thread, locking the two threads together into a strong, even seam. It was the world's first workable lockstitch machine, built years before anyone else had successfully achieved the same result. Even so, Walter was very deeply concerned about the impact of his machine. His daughter, Caroline, employed a dozen seamstresses in her corset shop, and he was concerned that his machine would put them all out of work. So he declined to patent his design, and only a few wooden prototypes were ever built. Later, his brother had duplicated the machine in iron, and it did make the fabric go through more smoothly. But the invention never went any further. 2 decades later, Elias Howe patented his lockstitch design. Hunt's abandoned machine was thrown into a center of a heated patent battle. The courts did acknowledge that Hunt designed the lockstitch first, but Elias Howe ended up retaining the rights to the patent. Years later, Isaac Singer arranged to pay Hunt $50,000 for his earlier design, but Hunt passed away in 1859 before Isaac Singer ever made any payment. In the end, Walter Hunt never became wealthy, but his legacy is everywhere, in every clasping safety pin, in every fountain pen, in every modern sewing machine that still uses the lockstitch. He was a quiet, ingenious figure whose inventions shaped daily life long after he was gone. Speaking of Elias Howe, he grew up in Spencer, Massachusetts. He was mechanically minded as a child and surrounded by textile mills and machinery. As an adult, after an illness ended his factory work, he spent many long hours watching his wife sew by hand. Slow, careful work that shaped his resolve to build a machine that could truly help her. Wouldn't it be nice if all of our husbands were like that? With the support of a friend who provided a small investment, Howe set to work in 1843. 3 years later, he achieved something that he believed that no other American had done before. He had created a practical, fully functioning lockstitch machine. Doo-doo-doo! His 1846 patent introduced 3 ideas that became the backbone of nearly every sewing machine to follow. A needle with an eye at the point, a shuttle that formed a lock stitch below the fabric, and an automatic feed that moved the cloth steadily along. But just the invention didn't guarantee success. Howe struggled to find buyers in the United States, and a business venture in England left him nearly destitute. When he returned home from England, he discovered that several manufacturers, including Elias Singer, had been selling machines that were built on the very principles that he had patented. So Howe, armed with just a little more than his paperwork and persistence, he took his case to court. In a landmark decision, the Patent Office affirmed Howe's priority as the true inventor of the American lockstitch machine. From that moment on, every manufacturer was required to pay him a royalty, $5 of every machine that was sold domestically, and $1 for each shipped abroad. The income transformed Howe's fortunes almost overnight. Now, Howe's inventive mind didn't just stop with sewing. He actually patented an early continuous clothing closure, a precursor to the modern zipper, although it never gained any traction. Also, during the Civil War, despite declining health, he did enlist as a private in the 17th Continental Volunteer Infantry, and he served as the regional postmaster. Elias died in 1867, right as his patent expired, but his impact endured. His machine, with its steady, reliable lock stitch, helped open doors to mass-produced clothing and modern garment manufacturing. Howe didn't invent sewing, but he did show the world how it could be transformed. If Elias Howe was the determined mechanic and Walter Hunt the brilliant but reluctant creator, Isaac Merritt Singer was the showman, the energetic, theatrical entrepreneur who transformed the sewing machine from a workshop curiosity into a household essential. Born in 1811 in Pittstown, New York, Singer spent his early life chasing the stage. He toured the country as an actor, built machinery on the side, and possessed a flair for the dramatic that followed him into every business venture that he pursued. When he encountered an early sewing machine model in a Boston workshop in 1850, he saw what other people had missed. It wasn't just a clever tool, it was also a world-changing opportunity. Singer didn't invent the sewing machine from scratch, but he made it work. Drawing on earlier designs from inventors like Elias Howe and Walter Hunt, he introduced key improvements that made the machine practical for long, continuous use. His 1851 patent included an overhanging arm, a straight vertical needle, and a stable table design, features that anybody who had used a treadle machine would instantly recognize. More than a technician, Singer was a natural salesman. He could demonstrate a machine with the confidence of a stage actor and the precision of a machinist. But his true genius was in business strategy. While Singer provided the charisma and the showmanship, it was actually his business partner, Edward Clark, who was a lawyer with cool, methodical mind, that created the system that made the Singer Sewing Company unstoppable. Clark introduced the now famous installment plan, $1 down and $1 a week. And this made Singer's machines available to the new middle class families for the first time. His strategy turned Singer's brilliant machines into a mass market phenomenon. Clark also was the one that insisted on women demonstrating the machines publicly. This was a radical and effective marketing innovation that invited ordinary housewives to imagine themselves sewing on one of these machines. Together, Singer, the showman, and Clark, the strategist, created a business model that many modern companies still use today. As Singer's business expanded, so did legal battle. He was sued by Elias Howe for patent infringement, and after years of tension, Singer ultimately paid Howe royalties for the use of the lock stitch design, which we already talked about. In another era, This legal dispute might have ruined the complete industry, but instead it led to the creation of something remarkable. During the bitter legal battles, Orlando B. Potter, a lawyer and president of the Grover and Baker Company, stepped in with a visionary solution. Rather than destroying each other in court, the leading company should pool their patents. His proposal led to the formation of the sewing machine combination in 1856. This was the very first patent pool in the United States. Thanks to Potter's unusual blend of legal insight and industry-level thinking, manufacturers could build better machines without fear of endless lawsuits. This allowed Singer's company to expand rapidly and bring stability to the whole industry. And that was only the beginning. By 1860, Singer's factories in New York were producing more sewing machines than any competitor in the world. The company built enormous new factories, including the Clydebank Works in Scotland, which later produced more than 8,000 machines a week and became one of the largest sewing machine factories on the earth. Singer's machines changed the rhythm of daily life. Shirts that used to take 15 hours to complete now only took one. Charitable societies, dressmakers, homemakers, they all adopted these new machines. Women could earn money from home, some of them for the very first time, using these Singer-built treadles. Isaac Merritt Singer died in 1875, leaving behind over $13 million and a legacy that stitched together engineering, showmanship, and business innovation. His machines, rugged, beautiful, and often ornately decorated, would become a permanent part of households all over the world. He didn't invent the first sewing machine. He didn't invent the lockstitch, but he transformed the sewing machine into a global household standard, and in doing so, shaped the modern world. And this brings us to the end of our journey through the early history of the treadle sewing machine. We followed the thread through Bartholomew Thimonier's factory-shaking chain stitch, to Elias Howe's determined lock-stitch breakthrough, to Walter Hunt's reluctant first lock-stitch machine in his Manhattan shop, and finally to Isaac Singer. You won't want to miss what comes next. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. In our next video, we'll move from invention to investigation to help you identify what machine you have, when and where it might have been made. Thank you for joining me on this historically inspired adventure. I can't wait to continue exploring with you, one stitch at a time. Bye-bye for now.